We just came back from a really cool little store called Witchcraft.
Yep.
And witch is like which kind of witch, you know. And then craft being beer. So we actually put a little sticker on our refrigerator.
Basically, if you want to know about Witchcraft, it's pretty much a beer lover's paradise.
Right?
We described it as like a beer library
that's
wasn't
unpretentious.
That wasn't pretentious.
It's not like beer snobs coming in there and be like, this is not exactly what I was looking for.
Dude, and they do that little mystery six-pack.
Yeah, and then they also have like price-saving things. Like if they have something on the shelf for a while, they'll kind of like reduce the price to try and get rid of it and find the beers at home.
Exactly. It's really
nice,
cool. We talked
system.
to this dude named Jody Reyes, and he's like one of the most knowledgeable guys I've met on beer so far. Always has been helping us out these last couple times buying beer. So why do we care about buying beer? Well, that's because we review one every episode.
Every time?
And this episode, we're going to still fall in line with our pumpkin theme.
Oh, yeah.
It's
still October.
Being the month of October, it's pumpkin beer time for us.
Can't deny it.
Now, the last two beers we've had, we had Wick for Brains.
Yes.
Gave that a 7. You gave it a 6.5.
Correct.
Then we had the Southern Tier Pumpkin, and we loved it. Gave that one a 9.0.
Yes, a 9. Straight up.
So this beer's got a lot to live up to.
It does, yeah. We've had...
Well, what are we drinking? Go ahead and tell them.
So we went ahead and purchased a beer from Harpoon Brewery, and it is called the Imperial Pumpkin. It's our second. Last year was also last week was also an Imperial Pumpkin Ale, and this is also going to be an Imperial Pumpkin Ale. It is 10.5% alcohol by volume, so it is pretty high. Chase, you just took your first sip. What are you tasting, bro?
Well, first of all, I didn't realize that we had bought a stout. I guess I should have read the bottle.
Oh, it's a stout?
Yeah, it's a stout. So, which is why the color.
That's awesome, though.
It's a deep, just rich black with like a hint of maybe like ruby.
Yeah. You
cannot
can't see through it at all.
like, whatsoever.
It's got a kind of a darker head.
Yep.
A little bit more browny.
And then now on the smell, I definitely got some. I got pumpkin in it, but I also kind of got like a dried fruit.
Yeah, it's like a sweetness, like outside of just pumpkin spices.
Like if you got like a big old handful of apricots and smelled them.
Yeah.
You know?
Like a house freshener.
And then the taste kind of surprised me.
Okay, I haven't tasted yet.
It wasn't really. The taste seemed upbeat to me. That's not a flavor thing, but
like it's movement. It has some movement.
I think there's
like
a coffee in there. Even
there's definitely like
even
it springs
chocolate
up on you. Like I don't know.
I think it's chocolate, dude. I think there's some chocolate in there.
You like take a sip and initially you're like okay, and then it's like,
yeah.
The real gusto of the flavor comes in like half a second after you've already tasted it, kind of.
And you can tell that this thing's got a lot of alcohol because it's almost warming my throat.
Yes.
It's good. I mean,
it's got body for sure.
The pumpkin, I feel, isn't there as much as some of the other things.
I agree. Yeah, I was surprised. I wouldn't even, if you hadn't told me this was a pumpkin beer, I wouldn't have said it was a pumpkin beer.
Yeah, so far the only trace of pumpkin I've got is in the nose. But as far as the taste goes, I am getting even like some spice, like almost like a ginger. Like gingerbread.
I can't really speak to the specific spice, but I agree that there is definitely something that kind of like makes it a lot more of a movement in the taste, you know, instead of just kind of like a straightforward, you know, I understand. This
like
is kind of just like,
slope.
it's like,
I think, so I guess there's a lot going on in this one.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
As it warms up, we'll go ahead and see where it takes us. But first impression, I am intrigued.
Definitely too.
You know?
We'll stave off until halftime, but we have something to work with right now.
Exactly. All right, guys. Well, we're back. We've had some time to really mull over our beers over here.
We did.
How are you feeling about it? It's a complex beer.
Yeah, I have no problem saying that. I think that it's a beer for the higher of tastes. You know, I mean, you can't go into this beer lightheartedly.
Now, it describes itself as half stout, half pumpkin ale. Now, I got to be honest, I'm getting more of the stout than I am the pumpkin.
I agree.
But that being said, it's still really good. I think its biggest gripe that I have is its aftertaste. That dried fruit aroma is also lingering when I'm done tasting it, and it gives me this sort of like raisiny feel, and I hate raisins.
Okay.
Besides that, though, the smell is really good. It smells like pumpkin and dried fruit, and then the taste is like a chocolatey, like spicy gingerbread with a little bit of coffee.
Yeah.
And it's a super smooth beer because of the alcohol percentage.
Right.
And it's definitely enjoyable. And what's really cool is it like actually warms my throat.
Yeah, it is still doing that.
And so I can totally see this is not a beer that I don't think you would sit around and drink. I think this is like a one-time beer that you sit by a fire and sort of like have.
Right,
and,
yeah, it's like a
relax
specialty
with it.
beer.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to kind of point at is like I feel like I don't really have beers like this a lot, so it's hard for me to like really approach it with an unbiased view. But there's so much going on with it. I mean, it's a porter, so it has a little bit of like coffee, and so is it a porter or stout?
It's a stout.
Okay, it's a stout. So I get like this little bit of coffee, and with most stouts I have, it's usually like a little bit thicker, you know.
Yeah.
But this is like it's almost like a black lager in that it's light. It's like a lighter. It's a little smoother for me.
Really? I'm not getting that.
For me, it's a little smoother. It's not as thick as I was expecting it to be for a stout. So there's like those kind of like, you know, confusions that I'm having with it, on top of the fact that it's not as pumpkin-y as I thought it would be. Plus, there's other things that are mixed in there as far as the spices go that I'm not really sure that I know what that is. And it has such a high alcoholic content that it's like sweet and has a lot of body. So there is a lot of stuff going on with this beer. And I'm trying to give everything its due diligence and like give it its respect.
You love that word, man.
Yeah. Well,
it's a great phrase.
As an accountant, that's like whenever you go.
Is that jargon?
When you go and like buy a company, right?
Uh-huh.
There's like making a rash decision and just buying a company, but then there's also doing due diligence where you're like going through every single thing in that company.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so there's a lot to be said about this. I'm still trying to get my head around it. So this, you know, the time between when we give it our number and now, it's going to be a pretty telling period for me.
Yeah. Okay.
For sure.
All right, man. Well, that's been all the witty banter. So let's go ahead and put some numbers on these beers, and we'll get out of here.
Okay. So again, I'm still perplexed by this beer. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yep.
Which to a certain extent I like. I mean, I like that it's not just like being cheap for me. You know, it is what it is.
Yeah, it still didn't bring to me. This is a great beer, but I don't think it's a good pumpkin beer.
I think that it's mislabeled as a pumpkin beer.
It's got like a pumpkin flavor in there.
I would love if they acknowledged that there was a pumpkin flavor, but don't call it a pumpkin beer.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at. And just like you said, it's incredibly complex, and I think this is the kind of beer that you need to sit down at a table with your friends where you're all just like munching on stuff, and it's like a cool night.
Easy feel night.
Exactly. This isn't going to be a beer that you're going to be drinking a lot of.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what's your number? I want you to go first.
My number for this beer, given, you know, our relative numbers for other pumpkin beers, I'm going to give this beer a 7.
Really?
Yeah.
That low? Just because of the pumpkin
thing? It's not that that's that low. It's just that, like, I don't want to give it, like, a 7.5 or an 8 because I give those things to things that, like, jump out at me. And I'm like, I like this a lot. And it's not that I dislike this. It's just, it's so... I'm still trying
Maybe too busy?
Yeah, it's too busy. There's too much movement in the taste for me to be able to really feel like, oh, yeah, like, this is this, or, you know, like, this is what I'm taking from it. I'm almost like every sip, I'm just kind of like, I don't know what to think about this.
Yeah.
And so just that sort of, like, uncertainty and that complexity that goes with it, and my, you know, crappy palate that can't process all of it, I'm gonna give it a 7 personally because it gave off such a, you know, kind of a hard vibe for me to overcome, you know.
All right, just to run through the flavor notes again: smells of pumpkin and dried fruit, tastes a little bit like pumpkin. You've got some coffee in there and chocolate, very smooth. The aftertaste to me is a little bit raisiny. It's the one thing I really don't like about it.
High alcohol content.
Very high alcohol content, but very complex, and I really like the complexity. Now, since we're going on a pumpkin scale, I'm gonna give this an 8.
Really?
I don't want to go lower because I just think that this beer pulled off its complexity very well. It wasn't muddy.
I'll agree.
It was an elegant complexity where I actually could discern each little note in there. Mm-hmm. But as far as the pumpkin realm, this wasn't what I was expecting, or I don't think this is exactly should be.
That played into my 7 too. I mean, the fact that it wasn't as pumpkin-y as I thought it would.
Yeah, and I get that, but I want to bust it up a little bit just because I do like the complexity, and I think this is a elegant beer.
Your palate's a little more refined than mine.
That's what I've been trying to tell you the whole time.
No, I know.
This whole episode.